Friday marked the first weekend for the Bay Area after lockdown was lifted. People back out there enjoying the weather and supporting local businesses. Thank you for watching KRON On. I'm Ella Sogomonian. While outdoor dining is allowed once again in San Francisco, many businesses struggled setting up outside with those parklets during this week's storm. KRON On's Gay Long is in San Francisco with that report.
A boost for small businesses in San Francisco's North Beach neighborhood after being closed for weeks or operating takeout and delivery only.
Oh, it's been a great night. I think people they couldn't wait to go out.
It's been tough for businesses, and so we hope that this will be a big benefit.
San Francisco shut down businesses on December 4th, 2 weeks before the state mandate. The governor lifted the regional stay-at-home order for the Bay Area, the timing coinciding with a powerful storm that walloped the region with heavy rain, making it challenging for restaurants to serve customers outside. Friday night, a break in the rain brought people out.
This is the first time in a long time and it feels great. We're free again.
The city's COVID cases rate, ICU capacity, and death rate are better than most, but with the restrictions relaxing, city leaders caution not to let your guard down. Health experts say people often forget you can be asymptomatic and still spread the virus.
Please wear masks. Please maintain social distancing. Please be very, very careful about mixing across households. This has gotten away from us a couple of times before. Let's not let it get away from us a third time while we're in the midst of trying to get everyone vaccinated.
Diners we spoke to say they are being cautious.
So this group that you see at this table, we've been a pretty close-knit. We've agreed to only see each other. So we've been able to, keep exposure to other people down, and it's been great.
We just try to stay safe, wear a mask when we're outside, keep our distance.
Public health officials acknowledge the damage health orders have done to the economy, but credit the strict orders with saving more lives. San Francisco restaurants have been struggling long before the pandemic. The Golden Gate Restaurant Association says restaurants cannot afford to reopen this time around after dwindling PPP small business loans. Back at North Beach, restaurants taking it day by day. Francesco Cavucci is the owner of Il Casaro Pizzeria.
We get the news to opening on Tuesday, and but we need to get going. So it was good and nice to get all the employees come back to work.
Gay Long reporting. She says that other restaurants plan to reopen for outdoor dining next month, and it takes about a week to bring staff back and order supplies. Meanwhile, hair and nail salons, outdoor museums and zoos, as well as outdoor family entertainment also got the green light to reopen with some restrictions. In other news, almost 1 year after the first confirmed case of COVID-19 in the South Bay, health officials have announced that Santa Clara County has surpassed 100,000 cases as the public health department says they're working to distribute more vaccines. KRON On's Dan Thorne has that story from San Jose.
Sunday will be the 1-year mark of the first confirmed coronavirus case here in Santa Clara County. Health officials say they're trying to make this the last grim milestone update and instead looking to reach milestones in terms of vaccinations. Since the beginning of the pandemic, more than 100,000 cases of COVID-19 have been recorded in Santa Clara County. More than 1,300 of those have resulted in death.
It's quite a milestone which none of us, I think, ever wanted to see.
County COVID-19 testing officer Dr. Marty Fensterscheib on Friday looked back at the response over the last year. He acknowledged there have been some faults, but says the county's main focus is getting residents, especially older ones, vaccinated.
With the high mortality in the senior citizens, getting the vaccine into the arms of our seniors in this community will go a long way in preventing further deaths and hospitalizations.
Dr. Fensterscheib says more than 80% of people who have died from COVID-19 have been 65 and older. At this point, almost 30% of county residents over 75 have gotten at least one dose of the vaccine. County health leaders say they need more doses.
Our system and our county as a whole, we stand strong with an infrastructure that is ready to further expand our capacity. However, we need more vaccine available to us to best serve our community with that increased capacity.
The county has set a high goal of getting 85% of its eligible residents vaccinated by August, but the county says there's an estimated 1.5 million people who would fit the criteria. In order to reach that goal, daily vaccine distribution would have to double. That's 13,000 to 15,000 people getting vaccinated every day.
That's still a goal. I think the government, the federal government, is doing its best also, and we're confident and hopeful that we'll get enough vaccine.
Santa Clara County will begin taking vaccine appointments over the phone next week. So far, most of those appointments have had to be made online. The county also says that they are looking into new options for mass vaccination sites and community locations. Reporting in San Jose, Dan Thorne, KRON 4 News.
A new UCSF study is shedding light on the essential workers that are most at risk of dying during a pandemic. At the top of the list, restaurant employees. Cooks ranked #1, followed by machine operators, agriculture workers, bakers, and construction workers. Using California death records, UCSF researchers analyzed deaths of all essential workers in California in 2020 between the ages of 18 and 65, comparing death rates of essential workers from years past. The study found working adults to have a 22% increase in death, while food and agriculture workers saw a 39% increase.
Latinos have the highest risk of death, but Latinos in the essential work category of food and agriculture. African Americans is the group that has the second highest, and there the sector that we find that is most frequently associated with the highest risk of deaths is the retail sector. The types of work jobs that are in the retail sector include grocery store workers.
The California Department of Public Health has reported that restaurant workers are being prioritized as essential workers and will be next in line to get the vaccine. In other news, the stock trading app Robinhood is limiting user trading to just 50 major stocks. GameStop is back on that list, but the number of shares you can buy is getting smaller and smaller. Early Friday morning, Robinhood limited GameStop holders to 5 shares, meaning they could only own up to 5. Later in the day, that number dropped to 2 and is now down to a single-digit share. To a single share, I should say. The Robinhood app came under fire just the other day for restricting trading in GameStop and other stocks that have soared recently, prompting outrage from investors, including billionaires like Mark Cuban, as well as lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Stocks sank again as a speculative frenzy over GameStop and a handful of others ramped up worries over how much damage an online revolt against Wall Street bigwigs can hurt the broader market. The S&P fell 73 points, the Nasdaq lost 266 points, and the Dow dropped 620. GameStop stock, on the other hand, soared to nearly 70%. This came after day trading app Robinhood, again, as we mentioned, allowed customers to start buying certain stocks again. GameStop and other downtrodden stocks have become battlegrounds where swarms of smaller investors see themselves making an epic stand against financial elites who had bet the stocks would fall. Apple has announced plans to roll out a new privacy feature called App Tracking Transparency. It will require iPhone users to give permission before apps can track them, and it's expected to arrive by April. So if you've been wondering if your phone is spying on you, well, if you use an app like Facebook Messenger, then it turns out you are being spied on in some way. Our consumer investigator Steve Sprasha tells us what we need to be concerned about.
We love our apps, and with over 1 billion users, Facebook's Messenger is one of the most popular ones.
I like that it's very easy to use. You get messages right at your notification, and you can pay through it now.
Yes, Messenger offers services to make our lives easier, but it's a free app, and because it's free, there's a dark side to what you're using.
They can figure out what you're talking about.
When you use Facebook Messenger device to device, your messages are encrypted between the two parties. But there's another party looking in. It's Messenger's owner, Facebook.
Once it gets to their systems, it's not encrypted anymore. They can look at it, they can read it, they can parse through it.
That results in things like this.
My friend and I were talking about this, and there's an ad popping up in my web browser for this, but I'd never searched for this. Well, that's why. It's because your data is being parsed through.
Facebook actually tells you it'll do that in its Messenger and WhatsApp, in its terms of conditions. And when you check OK, you're allowing the spying.
They're being offered to you because you are now the product, right? Your information, what you do, how you do it, is data that is sellable on a market.
What is, for the average consumer, the ultimate way to keep yourself secure?
For most consumers, you've got to weigh convenience versus privacy versus security.
Some folks have given up on Messenger. Why did you stop using it?
Because I just find it easier to call people or text them.
If you want to communicate with an app, you can use something like Telegram or Signal, which don't spy on you.
Those apps will not ask for that information, right? They are completely private, privacy focused, plus security focused.
A good rule of thumb when using the internet, assume that all your information is public and can be accessed by anybody, so take the precautions you need to keep yourself safe. Working for you, I'm consumer investigator Steve Sprazier.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced Friday that the Capitol Police officer who was killed during the January 6th riots will lay in honor next week in the Capitol Rotunda. Officer Brian Sicknick died after he was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the insurrection. The nation's capital remains under high alert nearly 3 weeks after that fatal riot. And Capitol Police are not only strengthening security, but warning lawmakers to be vigilant. Our D.C. correspondent Raquel Martin has the latest.
This is not right.
Nearly 3 weeks after the deadly insurrection at the Capitol, Illinois Democratic Congresswoman Sherry Bustos says she's troubled by looming threats of more violence.
A sense of sadness. I certainly would have hoped that it wouldn't come to having put fencing up all around what is called the Temple of Democracy.
But this week, the Department of Homeland Security warned domestic terror threats are increasing. Just this week, a man was arrested just feet away from the Capitol building. Police say he was armed with a loaded gun and carried a list of lawmakers. Friday, U.S. Capitol Police urged lawmakers and their staff to be vigilant and are beefing up security at nearby airports on busy travel days.
I trust that law enforcement figures out the best way to keep us safe.
Ohio Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown says he and his staff were given specific instructions, but
I've been advised by Capitol Police and others not to talk about my own security or the security of my staff.
The U.S. Capitol Police are now calling for a permanent fence to replace the temporary one currently surrounding the nation's capital. But D.C.'s mayor and some Republicans are pushing back. In a statement, Illinois Congressman Rodney Davis says there must be hearings to solidify new security measures and says members should receive classified briefings to, quote, understand the threat levels. In the meantime, nearly 5,000 National Guard troops will remain on patrol through March. In Washington, Raquel Martin.
Some great news in the fight against the coronavirus and our ability to obtain herd immunity as the third COVID-19 vaccine moves closer to being approved for emergency use. Johnson & Johnson says its one-dose coronavirus vaccine is 66% effective overall against the coronavirus, but 85% effective in preventing severe cases of the virus. In comparison, Pfizer's vaccine is 95% effective and Moderna's vaccine is 94% effective at preventing severe COVID-19 complications. Despite the difference, infectious disease experts say that the three vaccines are almost the same. Johnson & Johnson is expected to apply to the FDA next week for emergency use authorization, which could come by late February. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine could, again, help us get closer to herd immunity, according to medical experts. Herd immunity is a term that we have heard a lot about during this pandemic. A new California healthcare poll out says that a large number of people now believe in getting vaccinated. For more on this, here's KRON On's Teresa Estacio with a report from UCSF.
Bay Area medical experts explain the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was created different from Pfizer and Moderna, and the difference could be quite significant in the fight against SARS-CoV-2. This is Dr. John Schwartzberg.
You can use it, and then at the end of the day, if you have some left over in the vial, you put it back in the refrigerator, and then the next day you use it again. You can't do it with these more fragile vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer's vaccine.
Unlike Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines that require freezing temperatures and once thawed must be used or thrown out, J&J can be kept in a normal refrigerator, and it is a one and done deal. Although a notch less efficacious or effective than the other two, he gives us this to ponder.
The influenza vaccine ranges from 40 to 60%, depending upon the year, in terms of efficacy. And I won't miss an influenza vaccine because, you know, if you're going to tell me I have a 50% less chance of getting the influenza, I'm going to go for it. And if you're going to tell me I have a 70% chance of not getting SARS-CoV-2 by getting the J&J vaccine, I'm going to go for it. sure, it would be nice to have something 94 or 95%, but we've got to get people vaccinated quickly because that's what's going to save people's lives.
And that gets us to herd immunity, or as a doctor likes to say, community immunity. While a recent California healthcare poll shows 70% of residents say they will get the vaccine, is that enough? The doctor says that it is complicated. Well, because why? We live in a complicated world.
If you had, let's say, the city of San Francisco and you walled it off and didn't let anybody come in or anybody go out, then if you were talking about herd immunity, and I much prefer the name community immunity. So if you were talking about community immunity in that walled off San Francisco, you could talk about that. But we don't live in a world where we're walled off from other people. Viruses don't respect counties, and people aren't respecting county borders. We're moving around.
And there is this.
There's a debate about what will it take. On the low end, people say around 60% of the population being immune. And that's the real low end. And most people think it's higher than that. On the high end, people are talking about 85% of the population. So this is not only a number that we're still trying to figure out, but it may be a changing number depending upon what type of virus is circulating at the time.
Here in San Francisco, Teresa Stasio, KRON 4 News.
So far, according to the CDC, about 4.7 million people have been fully vaccinated in the United States, meaning they got both doses. More than 22 million people have gotten at least one of those vaccine shots, and more than 49 million doses have been distributed across the country. Here in California, the CDC says of the 5.6 million doses that have been distributed across the state, roughly 2.9 million people have gotten the shot. Of that number, just 487,000 people have gotten both necessary doses. Although vaccination pace is accelerating, local health departments are still expressing concern over supply. KRON On's Dan Kerman explains why fewer people in Marin County will get their first dose next week compared to previous weeks.
So far in Marin County, about 20% of its 23,000 residents aged 75 and over have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. That leaves a lot of people to go, and yet beginning next week, fewer residents will receive their first dose than the past few weeks.
Across all of our systems in Marin, Kaiser, Sutter, and Marin County Public Health, we're getting about 3,500 new doses this week. That's about half of the amount that we received the previous week and the week before that. And it becomes a challenge for us because we're not able to schedule nearly as many appointments.
Marin County Health Officer Matt Willis is clearly frustrated with the number of doses the county is getting.
With 500 new doses a day, it's going to take us almost a month to get through our oldest residents.
Willis says that's why teachers and law enforcement officers and those 65 to 74 are having to wait. The problem is Marin's total weekly allocation, which is typically about 8,000 doses, isn't increasing. That means each week, more of the total allotment must be held back for second doses, meaning fewer new people are getting the vaccine.
In order to keep up with vaccinating new people, we need more and more each week. Because you have a group of, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, if 2,000 people got vaccinated, you need those 2,000 doses for that, just to cover that group. So we need more than 2,000.
Overall, Marin County has vaccinated 9% of its residents, but again, they say if those weekly allotments don't increase, fewer new people will be receiving that crucial first dose. Dan Kerman, KRON 4 News.
San Francisco will not be the next Detroit. Despite many people having fled during the pandemic, that's a forecast from the Bay Area Economic Institute. Their researchers released yet another report backing the need for a second Transbay rail between San Francisco and Oakland, based on the belief that public transit ridership will rise again. Their mega regional transportation plan would link 21 Northern California counties together by unifying existing rail agencies and building a second Transbay BART tube. While working with BART and the Capitol Corridor, they envision a more seamless, faster connection into the Sacramento, San Joaquin, and Monterey regions. Some may question the timing of this plan given the economic blow by the pandemic, but the council's executive director believes that people will return to the Bay Area. And it's important to plan a vision for the future because these projects take decades.
And what BART and Capital Corridor are looking at is really a vision for future travel 20 years from now. We know remote work is probably here to stay to a certain extent, but we don't think that city centers are dead. We don't think that every meeting will be virtual from here on out. We still do think that people will go to office buildings. They'll eventually go to sporting events. They'll go to concerts. They'll make those leisure trips. In-person business meetings will again happen.
He also thinks that it's better to be prepared in case the new Biden administration and the state make a future investment into California's transportation. For some perspective, construction on the current Transbay Tube between San Francisco and Oakland started 5 decades ago in 1964. San Francisco's first mass vaccination site opened back up on Friday after a brief closure because of this week's winter storm. The site at City College will be open again this weekend, starting at 8 a.m. All vaccinations are for eligible people only and by appointment. San Francisco leaders are also working to open a vaccination site at Moscone Center and SF Market in Bayview. The city is aiming to vaccinate 10,000 people a day. Speaking of the rain, Chief Meteorologist Lawrence Carno is joining us now with your weekend weather forecast.
We're going to see a few more of those this weekend as we are going to see yet another storm system beginning to roll into the state. And here we go tonight. Got a couple of clouds moving in already. And, well, we're going to try and get a little break from the rain. You see dry out there toward the Golden Gate Bridge. It's been a very stormy week, as you know, and certainly we need that break. Our mountains can't handle much more water. And certainly going to see more mudslides if we get too much rain. But there's another cold front. But you watch here, it's just kind of falling apart. Not much energy to it. There's a ridge of high pressure, a weak ridge that kind of slipped in behind that last system, and that's holding this system at bay for the most part. So we're going to see some clouds and a slight chance of some showers. Hey, you head to the high country, you want to take advantage of all the snow. Some places 5, 6, even 7 feet of snow in Mammoth. Well, you got to deal with this tonight. We got some freezing fog up there. You don't see that very often in the high country, but if you're driving up there, you get that fog that develops in the atmosphere, and it's super cool. That means it's so cold it's actually below zero. But yeah, it looks like that'll freeze right to your windshield if you're driving up in that direction, so certainly watch out for that. Some other places you might want to watch out for too in the Central Valley, going down I-5 as we are looking at very cold temperatures, the moisture on the ground. We're going to see some dense fog developing through the Central Valley overnight tonight, dropping visibilities less than a quarter of a mile. If you've ever driven down I-5 and some of that fog, you know how dense that can be. So be careful there. Otherwise, around the Bay Area tonight, not a bad night. We've got some 40s, a little chilly in spots. 43 in Livermore, 43 in Half Moon Bay, 49 now in San Francisco, 42 in St. Helena, and 47 in Concord at this hour. But yeah, we're getting ready for the weekend now, and looks like we're going to catch a little bit of a break in the stormy pattern. Not entirely, but we're going to see the system kind of skimming parts of the North Bay, bringing with it a slight chance of a couple sprinkles there. Behind that, though, you see the storm system rolling in, and there we go. More rain returning on Monday and Tuesday. Looks like we'll catch a little bit of a break on Wednesday and Thursday. Looks mostly dry, but then after that, the following Monday, looks like we get right back into the rain again. So here we go. We've got some unsettled weather around the Bay Area. It's going to stay that way, but we're going to catch a little bit of a break this weekend. More rain on the way, it looks like, as we head in toward the beginning of this next week.
All right.
In the late afternoon, we saw that we had lost the outside lane, and then in today, it looks as if both lanes had been washed away overnight.
That is scary. Part of California's coastline is now in the ocean. It's a result of the torrential rain that pounded the Bay Area all the way down to the Central Coast. Take a look at this drone video. You can see the huge piece of the road missing on Highway 1, and that's just south of Big Sur. Both the north and southbound lanes washed away. Caltrans says that it's not clear when the road will be reopened again. The Big Sur coastline is prone to mudslides. You may remember back in 2017 when a mudslide closed a stretch of the road for more than a year. KRON On's Amy Larson has a closer look.
Well, this storm hit the whole Bay Area, and it really walloped South Monterey County, where it washed away an entire section of Highway 1 south of Big Sur. Right now, Caltrans officials are out there trying to assess how they will rebuild this world-famous, gorgeous part of Highway 1. Here is a bit of good news. I talked to Caltrans workers today. They said this landslide does not compare to the severity of the Mud Creek landslide that happened back in 2018. They think they can rebuild Highway 1 much faster this time around.
Rat Creek is in an area impacted by the Dolan fire burn scar. So this is what happened at this location was that we received a debris flow that overwhelmed the culvert on the hillside and began to top over the road. So throughout the day, we had standing water and debris on the road. In the late afternoon, we saw that we had lost the outside lane. And then in today, it looks as if both lanes had been washed away overnight. The water that runs over and drops off the edge of the road starts eroding back towards the cliff away from the sea. And that's the status that's the latest that we have.
So the harshest critics on Twitter are saying, you know what, Highway 1 is just not sustainable going through this corridor south of Big Sur. We should just do away with this road, start a new one. What do you think Caltrans would think about that? Do you guys think you have the engineering that can maintain this gorgeous, world famous stretch of roadway?
Yeah, we're committed to that ribbon of highway that runs along the Big Sur coast. It requires a relatively large amount of resources to maintain in summer, spring, fall, and winter. And every winter, in anticipation of winter, we do winter preparation work to try and secure the hillsides as best we can. And we're committed to providing the resources to reopening this highway.
I'm Amy Larson reporting for KRON 4 News.
In San Francisco, officials are looking to keep that Ferris wheel in Golden Gate Park for another 4 years. The 150-foot Sky Star wheel was brought to the park last October as a centerpiece for the park's 150th anniversary, but it's been largely closed because of COVID-19 restrictions. On Thursday of next week, the city will consider extending its stay through March of 2025, but it's currently slated to be removed this March. Hopefully they figure that out. I'd like to visit, haven't been yet. Well, music at a basketball game is the sort of thing that you might take for granted unless you've had the pleasure of witnessing Warriors beatmaster DJ D Sharp in action. KRON On's Kate Rooney meets the man behind the music.
His name is Derek Robinson, but thousands of Warriors fans know him another way. DJ D Sharp has been Golden State's team DJ for the last 8 years. These days, he's playing to a mostly empty arena, but he still thinks about his audience.
I always refer to Dub Nation as family. Like, it's just a wonderful family. Like, people get together, all walks of life. They come, they get in that building, and they just have a blast and have fun.
Not having the crowd is tough, but having him there, bringing that Warrior sound and bringing that with the songs that we used to, the excitement that we used to, it's been great. He's a great addition, and it makes it feel like a home court game.
Well before he began playing for crowds of thousands of Warriors fans, Robinson knew music would be his career, even as a young teen.
It was this movie called Beat Street that I saw, and there was a character in there, and he was the DJ. He was kind of the main character, and I just liked everything that he embodied. I was like, wow, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do.
He put together a makeshift set of turntables and mixers in his bedroom and spent hours practicing his craft. His first gig was a birthday party at a rec center. From there, he moved on to the club scene and then touring with other artists.
I just ended up traveling all around the world, and it was a beautiful thing because it just being from Oakland, East Oakland at that, it helped me. It just cultured me. Like I just, I learned so much, and it was a beautiful journey.
But the journey would bring him back to Oakland, where he's been front and center during Golden State's incredible run. And though this year's been so different, Robinson's kept that trademark positivity.
And I look around and I'm like, wait, there's no one here. But no, with me, I come from the school of, it's a performance every time, right? Like you get on, no matter who's in the building, if it's 5 people, if it's 5,000 people, you give the same show.
I'm sure he misses the crowds, but you see, practice makes perfect. Get your reps in and stay out of trouble while having as much fun as you can. You're watching KRON On, streaming Bay Area News 24/7.